right, let's do this video. Kyle, you want a family tree? Here you go. So of the original elves that came here 18,245 years ago, they were led by Pelasgus Hartorbourg, the High Elf. She was the first to hear the call. Let's put her right here. She had 6 siblings in their birth order. We have Sheena, total badass. Then we have a brother, Leonthorn. There's other information on here. We'll talk about it when the time comes up. We'll try to go in chronological order. Orem, Rayleigh, and then your patron, Raquel. Put her up here. Adjust my camera just a tiny bit. About 3,000 years after they came here, now they had many thousands of bannermen that followed them, as well as there were 10 other great elven houses. The Bergenstein house was one of them. They, of course, had all their bannermen, and then all the other great houses had their bannermen. But about 3,000 years once they got here, the lord of the Bergenstein house, Michelangelo, he got married to Pelasgus. That's about the year 3000. We'll skip ahead 3,000 years, about the year 6000. They give birth to twins, Elric and Tomasalon. The year 6000, first generation elves. I'm going to skip ahead about 5,000 years. Elric gets married to a high elf, Lady Shaneth Silverstone. They have some kids. Laric, 11,456. Marshall. Stephen, 13,004. And then, about 300 years later, Pelasgus, Michelangelo give birth to their third and final child, a son, Rutherford. 13,300. Go ahead about 4,000 years, Kirith Bergenstein is born. So we're at the year 14,313. We'll skip ahead about 400 years, 14,791. This is when Potions 11 takes place. This is definitely a renaissance of this high elven empire. Their adventures mostly take place here in Zerlock City. And then 8 years later, Michelangelo Bergenstein, he dies. Killed in battle with the great black dragon Yaxmalish in Erosis, which is over to the right on another continent known as Sumelia. This would be northern Sumelia. He passes. A little sub-note, he had a bridge built, or it was built in his name, I can't remember, here in Nineveh, in a city called East Farthington, aka Thievestown. This is where Tuesday's campaign takes place. These guys battled atop this magnificent bridge, and at the top is a large globe that emits light, and Jason's character, Bartholomew Whitlock, scorched and cracked it with a fireball. So, ultimately, though, we're still in the 14,000s, early 15,000s. So then we will go to the Queen's death, 16,019. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's back up a few thousand years. In the year 10,899, before the king dies, he's still on the board, Sheena passes. She's a total badass. She ventured down to the abyss. Sister Aetherdane had treated her and her surviving campaign members. That's how they knew to measure your ears when you returned from the netherworld of Pandemonium. All right, and then in 14,000, he passes. 16,000, she passes kind of mysteriously. She's on an adventure off-continent, exploring an unknown part of the world. Only one member of her party returns, half-crazed, here to Hartorbourg, where he finds Elric and Tomasalon, there at the Knight's Crossing, performing a night's vigil. He gives them the bad news about the passing of their mom. They take it very hard. They argue amongst themselves. Elric becomes hot-headed. He berates the messenger. They argue so much that this is the last time the twins ever speak to each other. They are seen in the presence of each other maybe a couple times, but they never speak, and then go their own separate ways. Later that night, the messenger, the final member of the Empress's party, commits suicide there at the Knight's Crossing, just not far from where you guys currently are in the Saturday campaign. So this brings us to a question of who is going to rule the Empire. Seems to be a matriarchal lineage. It is first offered to, it would go to Sheena, but she has passed, so it's offered to Raquel. Raquel says no. I have other business to attend. Elric, Tomasalon, completely distraught. It's the last thing on their mind. They refuse the crown. Rutherford, no, not interested. So, who then rules this empire? There is the Holy Council of 11. They are regents, and this is exactly one of their primary jobs, is to help in this type of situation, as well as to sanctify wars and so forth. A decision cannot be reached, and the three brothers step up. Leonthorn says, I will protect the realms of Uriakeeta. Orem says, I will protect the realms of Uria. And Rayleigh says, I will protect the realms of Chorus. There is a subcontinent down here that you guys can't see. 16,022, that's when they took their seats. Not long after that, about 10, 15 years, 16,039, Elric decides to create the Conclave of the Midnight Suns. It's a special order of knights. They become sanctioned by the Holy Council of 11. Their goal is to eradicate all monstrosities and evils from this world. That was the original mission of the High Elves. It is that type of creature that is suspected to have killed their mother. He will not rest until that mission is fulfilled, and therefore he will never take the crown, nor will any of the members of the conclaves of the Midnight Suns. He segregates himself and takes over a small bit of land, claims it as the Principality of Bergenstein. At one point, this general area was known as Hartorbourg for the most part. About 100 years later, Tomasalon, he decides he's going to create the Order of Honorable Moss Knights, 16,127. He takes a small section in the center of Hartorbourg, specifically. Their goal is to defend home base. So we're at 16,100. And I think at this point, we're going to skip up to about 17,000. Rutherford, kind of a walkabout, wander about, has some adventures. 17,045. Tomasalon marries a half-elf, Lady Helena Greenhand. They give birth to Prince Morton Greenhand. You guys have not met him, but in the current world, 18,245, he is the ruler of Hartorbourg. But he's born in 17,045. At some point, Helena passes away, and then about 400 years later, Tomasalon marries a second time to a human. She gives birth to Sir Bronston Mossbeard. You guys have dealt with him a few times. He's given you good advice on your travel itinerary here in Hartorbourg. He travels with the Moss Knights. He's uncle to Sir Cormac. and he stated that he just has no interest in politics. And actually, I'm sorry, I skipped something. Let's go back. Let's go back about 1,000 years. 16,000, the queen dies. Midnight Suns, Honorable Moss Night, 16,125. Right about this time, a huge comet is seen in the sky for 1,000 years. And Raquel ends up marrying a human, Baltamon Rathmore of Rimbrook. Rimbrook is the upper part of this peninsula here, north of Zerlock. 16,539. Under the comet, they give birth to Horval Rathmore. In his lifetime, he is revered as a saint by many humans, many half-elves, and even some elves. Considered the greatest paladin ever to exist and live within the Empire. At 16,539. His father, a human, at some point will pass away. Then we get up to the 17,000s. Prince Morton is born, and then 400 years later, Sir Bronston is born. Then this takes us to, we're going to skip ahead to about the year 18,000. This great war of thorns and roses has not occurred yet. I'm going to put Raquel over here. Her and Horval, for the most part, spend their time in Hartorbourg. He has various ventures in his life throughout. Rutherford, generally always traveling. At this point, late 17,000s, early 18,000s, he is friends with Mosherin. They have their own adventures. And then at some point, he goes missing. I'm going to move to Mossalon over here. Move Bronston over here off to the side. Same with Elric. So we have 3 kings controlling this empire the best they can. This is about the time that the orcs attack. At first, they seem to be small skirmishes. Elric Bergenstein passes 18,001. A few years later, Orem dies at a battle at the Fields of Glaren. This is considered the actual start of the war, the Battle of Thorns. The war rages for several decades. Mogar does not even come into the scene, I think, for a handful of years. When he does, he wreaks havoc, and at one point, 18,032, he has reached the southern borders of Hartorbourg. King Raelif comes up from Chorus to help defend. At the Battle of Flowers, outside the Marigold Hartorbourg Raskapel Conservatory, that's where he was beheaded by General Mogar in the orchards outside the conservatory. A couple hundred years later, you guys confront Ciaran Marth at this same conservatory. Raelif off the board. A year later, King Leonthorn dies. I don't have a lot of details about these 3 brothers' lives, so that's something that's not in our worldview at this point. So now we have a power vacuum. Who is going to control this empire now that this war has ended? Mogar has just mysteriously disappeared. The armies just seem to kind of fall apart and are routed easily from there. Holy Council of 11, again, trying to make a decision. Also, I'm sorry, Horval dies during the war. Princess Raquel, would you please accept the crown and be Empress? No, I will not. I have other things to attend. We'll put her up here. But for the most part, she still resides here in Hartorbourg. To Mossalon, I'm sorry, he passed at some point during the war, 18,028. Don't have many details on that. Morton Greenhand, still alive, but now it has fallen to him because his father has passed. It's only been a few years. He is now in charge of the Holy Order of the Honorable Moss Knights. He does not want the crown. It sounds like too much of a job for him. His wives have passed. Sir Bronston, really has too much human in him, but if he were hard pressed, he would say, again, he has no interest in politics. We'll take Bronston off the board. So, amongst this dissension, 5 high elves step up. And actually, right before they step up, within that same year, I think, dwarves in Upper Uriakeeta declared themselves an independent nation known as Krindal. Outside of the Empire, they want nothing to do with the Empire. The elves are too tired to deal with it. They allow it. Sais has always kind of been a bit of an independent place anyway throughout the history of the Empire, so they allow it to also do its thing. But Shaneth Silverstone, a high elf, one of the original elves, that should not say, I'm sorry, I have the wrong person. Queen Avalon Silverstone, she decides to take the Satorian Protectorate up here. I kind of picture this as like the Badlands, lots of mountains, lots of grasslands, beautiful rivers and vistas. The Great Kingdom of the Belfonts, which includes Volos. You can't see it on the map, but it goes all the way to the borders of Clavorna, the continent dedicated to Dragonborn. And at that border is the Great Library of Constantinople. Saturday's group, you are here. Your liege lord, Manalorio Dorvir, his seat is at Yor. Then the Grand Talise, Tuesday's campaign here in Nineveh, in East Farthington, aka Thievestown. Your liege lord sits at Zythene, King Maxon Dewing. South of the mountains of Fall Rue, here in the Mabon Empire. Bit of a contentious title. The Empress Elsinoria Everfaith, as she has self-proclaimed. Her seat is here at the Quadi. And then the Holy Dynasty of Pimaton, all the way south, is King Zenusret Moonglow. His seat is here at Asak. This is in, I think, about the year 18,035, if I recall. About 70 years later, Morton Greenhand takes another wife, or he takes a wife, his only wife, Lady Francesca Rivers, a half-elf. They give birth to Sir Cormac Greenhand. This is the Moss Knight that you guys are most intimate with, that travels with Mosheran's circus. Now, should there ever be a power vacuum and one of these 5 kings fall or be taken off the board, especially Mandalorian, Cormac would be an interesting contender for the crown, even though he has some human in him. He is a direct descendant of Pelasgus and Michelangelo Bergenstein. He's very well liked. He is getting married to a princess of Cayman. Princess Shasas, I can't even say it, Shasisalan, and she is the daughter of the Queen in Yellow. Now, he has no particular intentions of taking the crown. He has no bad intentions towards his High King, nor does he have any intentions of consolidating lands. But some people see this as a power move. He could begin to unify Hartorbourg into its once former glory, and that makes some people happy. But some people like Pamphylia are not happy about that because they have gained lands over the last 100 years. Who knows what this High King thinks? There could be other players on the board. I don't have much information about these kings and queens, if they have children or whatnot, what other type of factions and family members. But so that's a kind of why Cormac's thing is a big deal. It's good and bad, not only within his home country of Hartorbourg, but outside. So he's kind of doing the best he can to navigate through all this. So there's your general, here's your power players that you know of within your worldview. Raquel over here in Hartorbourg, definitely with Cormac. They're aligned without a doubt. I hope that helps. If you got any questions, just put them there in the comments section, and I'll just have to create more to answer those questions.